Ladies and gentlemen, hello once again. Please may we all rise in our seats for the entry of His Excellency the President of the Republic of Zambia. You are welcome, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to remain standing for the playing of the anthem of the African Union. Thank you very much. You may be seated. Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zambia, Honorable Ministers of Member States of the African Union, the Director General of the International Vaccine Institution, the representative of the Director General of the Africa Centers for Disease Control, members of the media, all protocols observed. On behalf of the African Union Commission, it is my honor to welcome you to this high-level breakfast meeting and leadership dialogue on the occasion of the launch of Achieve Africa. My name is Wayne Musabayana. I'm the head of communication at the African Union Commission. I will be joined in this duty of Director of Ceremonies by my long-standing colleague, Mr. Peter Kebila. Before we proceed, allow me to inform you that interpretation is available, that is to facilitate communication in all the 6 languages of the African Union. We are deeply grateful to the government of the Republic of Zambia for convening this important gathering and to our co-conveners, and that is the government of Ethiopia, of Egypt, Ghana, Nigeria, Rwanda, and South Africa, together with the International Vaccine Institute and the Africa CDC. We also wish to extend recognition of the African Medicines Agency for joining us as a guest institution. Your Excellencies, Africa stands at a defining moment in its journey towards health security, resilience, and self-reliance. The vision that is set out in Agenda 2063 calls for a continent able to safeguard the health of its people and to shape its own development trajectory. Research, innovation, and industrial capacity are central to that ambition. If I may just give you a breakdown of Agenda 2063, it is the development framework for the continent of Africa. and it spans a 50-year period, starting in 2013, when it was adopted by all the 55 heads of state of the continent. What it aims to do is to achieve an Africa that is prosperous, that is united, and that is integrated. Critically, Agenda 2063 says that all that development will happen only with the work of the African people themselves. And it also seeks to position Africa as a strong voice in global affairs. Let's come back to Achieve Africa. Achieve Africa represents a decisive step in that direction. Today's dialogue, therefore, seeks your leadership and your endorsement. With your support, Achieve Africa can become the platform that anchors continental collaboration, accelerates innovation, and positions Africa as a driver, not a primary recipient of global health security. So your presence here this morning demonstrates the political will that is required to move from agenda to action. We are looking forward to a productive and inspiring change. I will now invite to the podium Professor Roma Chilengi. He is a special advisor to the President of the Republic of Zambia. He is the Health Director, Zambia Public Health Institute. Let us welcome him warmly. Professor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Master of Ceremony, Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Zambia, Your Excellencies, Ministers of Health, representing member states, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Honorable Ministers, distinguished delegates, scientists, partners, let me simply say, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of the government of the Republic of Zambia, it is my distinct honor this morning and privilege to warmly welcome you to this important gathering marking the launch of the Achieve Africa initiative. We are deeply honored by the presence of our heads of state and government whose leadership and vision continue to shape Africa's future. Your attendance today sends a powerful message that health security, scientific sovereignty, and continental collaboration are priorities at the highest level of our union. I wish to extend sincere appreciation to our gracious hosts, the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, and to our institutional partners and International Vaccine Institute, Africa CDC, the African Medicines Agency, and their stewardship in bringing us together at this defining moment. Distinguished guests, the experience of recent years from cholera to COVID-19, from Ebola to Mpox, have reminded us that resilience in health is inseparable from self-reliance in science and innovation. Our continent has demonstrated courage, solidarity, and ingenuity. Yet, we also recognize that enduring resilience requires strengthening our capacity across the full spectrum of research, development, manufacturing, and regulation. Today's launch of Achieve Africa reflects a shared commitment to advancing that vision, one in which Africa builds, leads, sustains its own research and development ecosystem, one in which scientists are empowered, one in which our institutions are equipped to respond swiftly and effectively to the health priorities of our people. Your Excellencies, your leadership has been instrumental in elevating health security and local manufacturing on the continental agenda. As we convened ahead of your deliberations, we do so with optimism and determination, confident that this initiative will be guided by the same spirit of unity and resolve that defines the African Union. We welcome you not only to the launch of an initiative, but to the strengthening of a movement towards dignity, sovereignty, resilience, and African health. Your Excellencies, with these remarks, I once again extend a warm and respectful welcome to you all, distinguished heads of state and government and institution. To every partner present today, I want to say thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Master of Ceremony.
Thank you very much, Prof. And thank you for your voice in encouraging that we continue to be resilient, we continue to aim to manufacture our own health products within the continent, as well as doing the regulation that is applicable to the continent. Thank you so much, Prof, for those words. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to welcome very warmly the WHO Regional Director for Africa, Professor Jalabi, who has joined us. Thank you so much for being here. We proceed now to turn your attention to the screening of a very short video that is going to be introducing Achieve Africa.
Africa is at a pivotal moment. Across the continent, scientific capacity is rising, manufacturing is scaling up, yet global health financing is declining, putting hard-won progress at risk and exposing fragile systems. This moment demands African-led solutions, now more than ever. African governments and institutions have made their ambition clear, aligned with Agenda 2063 and with Africa's health and development priorities. To invest in research and development, to produce 60% of Africa's vaccines locally by 2040. Achieving this means building the full value chain, from discovery to delivery, designing, developing, testing, and manufacturing vaccines and biologics end to end, for health priorities defined by Africa. This is why Achieve Africa exists. Achieve Africa is a continent-led initiative championed by the African Union. Its mission is clear: to power Africa's research and development engine through technology transfer, sustainable financing, and long-term equitable partnerships. From early vaccine discovery to workforce training and clinical research, from regulatory readiness to scalable manufacturing. Achieve Africa is collaborative by design, connecting scientists, institutions, manufacturers, and funders, aligned with the Accra Reset and the new vision for development finance and partnership. African leaders design, govern, and co-finance Achieve Africa, ensuring decisions are made by Africa for Africa. The launch of Achieve Africa is a shared commitment to invest in science as the foundation of health security, resilience, and sovereignty. This is an open invitation to governments, to scientists and innovators, to institutions, funders, and partners around the world. Join us in building Africa's end-to-end research and development ecosystem. Support African-led innovation. Strengthen global health security. Achieve Africa.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my honor to invite Dr. Jerome Kim, who is the Director General of the International Vaccine Institute, to present the vision of Achieve Africa. Dr. Kim, I welcome you to the stage.
Welcome to His Excellency President Hakainde Hichilema, and representing His Excellency the President of Ghana, the Honorable Minister of Health Kwabena Minta Akando, Professor Mohamed Janabi, the WHO Regional Director for Afro, and Dr. Jean-Marie Akwabele, representing the Director General of the Africa CDC. Excellencies, honorable guests, distinguished speakers and panelists, colleagues and friends, all protocols observed. Good morning. The International Vaccine Institute is proud to join the government of Zambia and other stakeholders in welcoming you to this important event. Without going into the details, this effort started on the day that USAID disappeared. And looking back, perhaps the best thing to say about 2025 is, thank goodness it's history. But from the perspective of 2026, we are all still here. We're all stronger, we're smarter, and we're more determined. We're here to announce the launch of the program called Accelerating Health Innovation, Equity, and Development of Vaccines and Biologics in Africa. In short, Achieve Africa, a new initiative to develop African-led R&D for vaccines and biologics prioritized by African countries, creating an R&D ecosystem to pursue a product pipeline to engage manufacturing of biologics of the countries that many of the countries here are pursuing. In short, African-led biomedical innovation to meet Africa's needs. We're here today with governments, stakeholders, and partners to discuss this new paradigm, this new model, science in support of the AU's goal of 60% self-sufficiency in vaccines by 2040, by enabling an R&D engine for biomedical innovation that features African political leadership, African scientific leadership, African ownership of the entire effort through funding, African ownership of IP, data, and samples. We're reminded that collaboration does not guarantee equity, but we hope that on an equal footing, African scientific leadership can, through Achieve Africa, work as equals with global partners to confront the diseases relevant to the continent. Uplifted by the Accra Reset, and with our partners globally and with African scientists, many of them here, we hope that the announcement this morning will be the critical first step in a new scientific journey. I think we don't need reminding that 2025 was a year of pain for global health. But we did learn something. We learned that maybe the global north should become global in terms of its outlook on health. We learned that potentially migration from centers up north where decisions are made about global health should be reserved or moved now slowly to the regions where health and global health are on the front line. We learned that ownership of things like scientific efforts, health efforts, intellectual property, data, and samples are a critical part of building the next generation of African scientists and capabilities. We're reminded that there are still many diseases that are highly relevant for low and middle income countries. And what you see here are in blue those vaccines that, where there are vaccines available. In stripes, the vaccines where we have a vaccine, but we could use better vaccines. And in gray, the vaccines that still need to be developed. And many of these diseases are extraordinarily relevant for Africa and other low and middle income countries. We're reminded that the AU has set a target of 60%, but this aligns perfectly with the Agenda 2063 and the AU's goal of eventually becoming much more self-sufficient and much more secure in terms of vaccine acquisition. So here we'd like to introduce Achieve Africa, Accelerating Health Innovation, Equity and Development of Vaccines and Biologics in Africa. Achieve Africa, more than anything, it's not a massive program, it's a framework. It's a framework upon which other things can be built. But in order to have this framework, we need infrastructure and expertise necessary for African institutions to lead R&D efforts. We need a pipeline of priority products designed to fill needs present on the continent. We need to incorporate leading edge technologies, including RNA, but not limited to mRNA, in order to accelerate the development of next generation vaccines and biologics. And finally, we need partnerships, equal partnerships, partnerships on an equity basis, where African scientists participate in a meaningful way and on an equal basis with scientists from elsewhere around the world. Achieve Africa, then, is a project that starts with a hope that we can find $100 million in funding for research and development around products prioritized by Africa. The key component here is not that this is a US program or a North American or a European program or an Asian program. This is a program that is designed to be led by African scientists with stakeholders in a Council of African countries and other important stakeholders in order to decide what the critical elements of strategy are that this effort will develop. African researchers developing products to meet African needs. This builds upon the ecosystem that already exists in Africa. And you can see here across the top the different elements of what we call the vaccine value chain: discovery, development, regulation, manufacturing, purchase, and vaccination. And what you see in the dots are where Africa has capabilities already or where capabilities need to be strengthened. And so you can see Africa has capabilities, and the goal of Achieve Africa is to enhance the capabilities across the value chain so that Africa can practically participate in the development of products that it needs. So Achieve Africa has multiple work streams, I guess is the best way to think about it, but you can break them down into the value chain itself. You see number one, the importance of human genomics, pathogen genomics, and epidemiology, knowing what the burden of disease is. Number two and number four, immunogen design and preclinical science are the work that goes on in the laboratories to develop new products. Translational research, clinical research, and trial networks, number three and number five, are really a part of translating the things that the laboratory develops into products that we can test in humans. Then, of course, data management and bioinformatics, critical, underlies the entire process. Achieve Africa does not do manufacturing. It can optimize manufacturing. It can, as IVI does, do technology transfer to strengthen manufacturing, but in and of itself, it is to provide the pipeline of products to go into manufacturing so that the manufacturing sites that are being built now are always kept warm, always kept busy, so that the capabilities are there if another pandemic strikes, for there to be African solutions to the problem. Then regulatory readiness and human resource and resource development, really critical to anything that is going to launch a new industry in Africa. Achieve Africa is really linked to multiple elements that already exist in the AU agenda and among collaborators, many of whom are working in Africa. But you can see here that this is not an effort that is intended to be independent. It is an effort that is intended to be dependent and build upon things that the African Union and other organizations have already put into place. Achieve Africa has over 50 partners from over 20 countries, and you can see the logos of the different collaborators listed here, including manufacturers. More than anything, Achieve Africa shows the power of leverage. You can see African-led end-to-end R&D for product development of vaccines and biologics will be expensive. But this is a new effort. Research and development funding to move to discover these priority products, to move them through clinical testing, to get them manufactured, approved, and used. But in order to do that, we're going to need funding. And all of this starts at the bottom left-hand side of the pyramid with a donation from the University of Pennsylvania of $50 million, which includes the intellectual property being donated to low and middle income countries. The second part of this was critical. This is the African ownership of Achieve Africa. The countries listed here, Rwanda, Nigeria, Zambia, South Africa, and Ethiopia, had each committed funding to this. So on top of the 50 million, we have 25 million. We still have to go to the European Union, to different philanthropic funders and others. We have a contribution from a foundation that we can't name that will total $20 million for human resource development. So what we're providing to the leaders of African countries is a unique opportunity for them to be able to go as leaders to the European Union, to the Gates Foundation, to the Wellcome Trust, and others to say, Africa has $95 million to support research and development, to support a research and development engine. This is the new model. Join us. Help us to leverage the funding that we've raised to build a R&D engine that will sustain manufacturing in the future. So we hope that this will inspire others in the room that have not yet committed to join the Achieve Africa Consortium. And this afternoon we're having, I think, the first meeting face-to-face of the investigators in Achieve Africa. And this is really a momentous occasion for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Dr. Jerome King, and he is the Director General of the International Vaccine Institute. He was presenting there the vision of the Institute, and I was very glad to note that there is a timeline that is associated with this project with milestones to measure progress. So we will be looking forward to that. Thank you so much, Doctor. We move on now, and it is my honor to welcome Mr. Kwabena Minta Akando, and he is the Minister of Health in the Republic of Ghana. He will be speaking on behalf of His Excellency the President, Dr. John Dramani Mahama. Minister, you have the floor.
Your Excellency, the President of Zambia, Your Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, partners, scientists, ladies and gentlemen, I deliver these remarks on behalf of the President of the Republic of Ghana, President John Dramani Mahama. Your Excellency, before I read the statement, I am excited to note that there's a huge sales of fugu in Zambia, as you told me. So it is quite interesting to note that the Zambians have now realized there is no more blouse, but it's fugu. Thank you, Your Excellency. It is a great honor to join you at this defining moment for our continent, the launch of Achieve Africa. Let me begin by applauding the International Vaccine Institute, Africa CDC, and the African Medicine Agency for their leadership. This initiative represents something deeply important: African scientific leadership, African ownership, and African ambition coming together at the right time. Ghana is proud to be recognized for our leadership and for the strong alignment between Achieve Africa and the Accra Research Agenda, which calls for new models of financing and Africa ownership of development priorities. Ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19 was a painful wake-up call. It showed us that when the world is in crisis, Africa cannot rely on goodwill alone. Because the truth is stark. Africa represents 17% of the world's population. We account for 25% of global vaccine demand, yet we produce less than 1% of global vaccine supply. Our public vaccine market is about $1.3 billion and expected to expand up to $4.3 billion by 2030. At the same time, official development assistance for health is expected to fall by 70% between 2021 and 2025. These realities leave us with only one conclusion. Health sovereignty is no longer optional. Achieve Africa is Africa's response to this moment. This 100 million 5-year African-led initiative is designed to strengthen the entire research and development pipeline, from discovery to clinical trials to regulatory readiness. It brings together scientists from more than 20 African countries and 50 institutions, focusing on priority diseases such as HIV, mpox, chikungunya, and Rift Valley fever. This is not just about manufacturing vaccines, because without R&D, manufacturing cannot be sustainable. This is not just about manufacturing vaccines, because without R&D, manufacturing cannot be sustainable. Achieve Africa provides the research engine that will help Africa reach the African Union's bold goal, producing 60% of our vaccines locally by 2040. Your Excellency, Ghana has placed health sovereignty at the heart of our national development agenda. We are taking deliberate, concrete steps. In 2023, Ghana established the National Vaccine Institute through Act 1097 to drive vaccine research, manufacturing, and market development. And I'm excited to know that one of our leading manufacturers are in the room, Atlantic Life Sciences. Together with WHO and the European Union, we are conducting a nationwide assessment of clinical trial capacity to strengthen cutting-edge research in Ghana. We are investing in mRNA research and biomanufacturing infrastructure to prepare for future pandemics. We are strengthening regulatory systems and pharmacovigilance to ensure African-made products meet global standards. And again, I want to recognize the AMA boss, who was just our past boss for the FDA in Ghana, and he contributed immensely to the strength of the FDA as we have today. To move from vision to reality, Ghana is investing $50 million in seed funding for vaccines and pharmaceutical manufacturing, research, and workforce development. We are also advancing plans for pharmaceutical and biomanufacturing park to serve the West African region. Under the AFTA, we are committed to regional collaboration to boost innovation, manufacturing, and equitable access across Africa. But no country can achieve vaccine sovereignty alone. Achieve Africa strengthens and connects major continental efforts. The new public health order, MAV+, and the Pharmaceutical Manufacturing Plan for Africa, the African Medicine Agency, Agenda 2063, and AU Immunization Agenda 2030, the Science, Technology, and Innovation Strategy for Africa. Together, these initiatives form the backbone of Africa's health sovereignty architecture. And this is bigger than health. This is about jobs, industrialization, innovation, and economic growth. Health is not just a cost. Health is an investment. To succeed, Achieve Africa must be matched with practical enablers, sustain financing for African-led R&D and clinical trials, harmonize regulation through the African Medicine Agency, build skilled workforce in GMP manufacturing, bioinformatics, and clinical research, create predictable market throughput procurement and advanced purchase commitment. This is how we crowd in private investment and build sustainable industries. And this statement I'm going to make is on behalf of His Excellency the President. I am honored to accept the role of Achieve Africa Ambassador. Ghana will use this platform to mobilize resources and convene partnerships, but this journey belongs to all of us. I call on Africa member states, development partners, philanthropics, the private sector, join us with long-term financing, technology partnerships, and support for African scientific talent. Because when political leadership, scientific excellence, and market certainty align, Africa will not only protect its people, we will contribute to global health security. Your Excellency, Achieve Africa is a declaration of purpose. African lives must be safeguarded by African strength. Let us build a future where vaccines and biologics are discovered, developed, tested, approved, and produced in Africa, for Africa, and for the world. I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, and also thank you so much for sharing some practical best practices from Ghana. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to a very important moment, perhaps the most important of our gathering today, and that is the time when we will hear from His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zambia. And the President is a champion in improving the health of African people. In his country, he has increased the availability of medicines in public health institutions from 31% in 2021 to 85% currently. He is the champion at a global level of cholera eradication. He is also the champion of the African Union on ending child marriages. And I think we can make a direct relationship between ending child marriages and the status of health on the continent. And finally, His Excellency is hosting in his country the African Union's Economic, Social and Cultural Council, the ECOSOC, which aims to ensure the engagement of African citizens in the development of the continent and the attainment of the goals and aspirations of Agenda 2063. So it is really my very great pleasure and honor to welcome to the blue podium His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zambia.
Thank you very much. You may take your seats, please. Thank you. Let me just acknowledge those that represent my colleagues, heads of state and government, who are supposed to be here. I can vouch for them that we are all busy, asked to attend 3 or so functions at the same time. So I know they are present through those who represent them. Let me acknowledge the ministers, senior leaders from our governments on the continent and from elsewhere. Also, our AU head communications. Thank you very much. Distinguished partners, you have already been listed, so I shall not take too much time in there. Ladies and gentlemen, may I simply say we are honored on behalf of the people of Zambia to host this breakfast dialogue launching Achieve Africa today, the continent's research and development engine for vaccine and therapeutic sovereignty is very important. You've already heard from the speakers before me, and they've all said the right things. I think it's time that Africa secure this place, and rightfully so, with regard to vaccine availability on a timely basis. I think that's what it's all about. My colleague, Prof. Chilengi, talked about experiences of cholera, experiences of COVID-19. We all know what happened to the supply chains and that we were at the back of the queue and we lost citizens unnecessarily. So it's very important that we understand what we're doing today. Of course, what we're launching today is a culmination of the work that you've all been doing in your own spaces, and we appreciate that. This gathering takes place at a defining moment truly for us on the continent, as I've said, that we should accept the reality of the world today. Geopolitics have changed, and it will not make our situation better. It will only make it worse. I think it's important that we acknowledge that. Why Achieve Africa matters? I think my colleagues who have spoken have already touched on those issues. Africa has strengthened vaccine manufacturing, but this is not enough. What Ghana is doing is not enough. What Rwanda is doing is not enough. What Egypt, what whoever, South Africa is doing is not enough. We need to do more. That's the imperative that we're faced with. Health sovereignty requires end-to-end capacity, not a halfway house, because ultimately it means the patient who should have been saved may die if we start a process and we don't complete it. So it's very important that we understand the importance of the end-to-end in our approach. I must also be clear here that it is important, very, very important, that we understand the importance of what it means at the design stage, development stage, clinical testing, regulation. If we have disparate regulatory environments, yet we're talking about working together for the same agenda, you know what that means. It means that we'll be creating bottlenecks, challenges towards this noble agenda. So we need not only to have what I may call minimum regulatory environments that are standard, reasonably so. We know the jurisdictions are different, the laws are different, but I think in this area, we must work to harmonize, rationalize, harmonize, so that we can have a smooth, processes that are needed to take place. It's also important that delivery functions. Our supply chains must function, and I will touch on this issue with regard to the Africa Free Trade Area, the importance of accelerating that work to support the launch that we're having today and the good efforts that are taking place. The continental gap has already been articulated, Minister of Ghana, that Africa has 17% of the world population, but yet our demand for vaccines globally is 25%, thereabouts. And it's important that we reduce or increase, if I may say, the gap that exists. Look at our demand, 25%, but we only produce 1%. I mean, this is a no-brainer. We need to deal with this issue and deal with it yesterday. It's an embarrassing situation and it's unacceptable. Our AU goal has already been articulated. By 2040, we need to gravitate this from 1% to 60%. That's a huge exercise. It requires a lot of collaboration, ingenuity, smart work. Very, very important. So I think we must move very quickly. Achieve Africa's core work clearly unites experts. So far, from 20 plus countries and 50 institutions already working together. And we want to encourage this kind of work, this approach to tackling our problems, our challenges. So let us build around these 9 pillars we've established for ourselves. Just to repeat, genomics, vaccine design, clinical trials, regulatory witness. I touched on regulation already. Very important. So, the targets Africa's priority diseases includes HIV, Mpox, and indeed those that have already been under discussion, in fact, which have motivated the work that we're doing today. This aligns with our Africa's Agenda 2063. The official, the AI 2030, Africa CDC Vision 2030, Partnership for African Vaccine Manufacturing, and complements that are necessary towards the global partnerships. I mean, various facets, various bits and pieces need to be put together. It's not always good to talk about what we need to do, but how do we assemble these little bits and pieces together? Who does what? Who works with who to get the job done is extremely important. I realized this myself 4.5 years ago when I took public office from the private sector, that in the public sector, sometimes we sing the same song or we sing the hymn from the same hymn sheet. But to connect the verses, to connect the pieces together becomes a huge challenge. Even with the best intentions, I think we must be aware of this issue in the work that we're doing. And we must also learn from each other quickly. No need to reinvent the wheel. Just learn from each other. And then we can get the job done much quicker at a lower cost. You already know that we have a financing challenge on the continent. I don't have to repeat what is being discussed. It's topical. You go to the main AU hall there, side meetings, this is one of the key issues. Financing investments that are required. Not just investments in R&D to manufacture, but even market access to make products available from the supply point, production point, supply point, to the demand point. We are failing as a continent. And for some of us who basically come from the background of business, this distortion cannot be accepted. Where demand is there and is effective demand, supply is sitting somewhere else, and you can't join the two together. This is unacceptable. It's actually a crime. I call it a crime because the damage it causes to all of us is huge. So we know ODA has scaled down. Geopolitics have changed. Africa must rise to the challenge. I like the target number, $100 million. Seriously, how can this continent be talking about $100 million? We should be speccing up. We should be talking about more, because it is fundamental to the lives of our people. What is it that you would achieve as we drive economic growth, as we increase business opportunities, create jobs for our people, but we don't extract some of that added revenue, the growth in that treasury envelope, and direct it to health and to vaccine sovereignty? What would be the meaning of that? I think it won't be meaningful enough. So let us do what we need to do. This is really what I call taking the next steps, essential steps towards deepening our Africa Free Trade Area intentions in the health sector, in this space. Very important. I do believe political leadership is there. You've heard what's happening in Ghana. You've heard what's happening elsewhere. If another president stood here, they will talk about their country's commitment to this agenda. But we must say this commitment must deepen. It must not be shallow. It must not be based on statements. It must be based on walking the talk. But we also say we can accelerate this by having gatherings like this, working together and reminding our leaders back home that maybe we're not doing enough. can we do more towards this agenda? But I do believe that representing my colleagues now, there's a new way of looking at things from the African political leaders. We do recognize things that we have not done for years, which are now urgent and need to be done. And I think you, the professionals, must exploit this new spirit of the African leaders. Certainly I can speak of what we're doing in Zambia. You heard the numbers. When we took office 4.5 years ago, it was terrible that you went to our hospitals and the availability of medicines was just around 30, 40. That was unacceptable. And we took the decision. And that's how I appointed Prof. Chilengi to be my first COVID advisor, then health advisor. And with a lot of hard work, availability of medicines now is over 80% within basically 4.5 years. But we still have challenges inside there, such as what? That the medicines will be available, but someone in the health chain is not making that medicine available to the patient. I hope you understand what I mean. That doesn't make anyone successful. We need to continue walking those steps towards matching availability, really with dispensing that medicine to the patient when the patient needs it. Simple, very simple. We should truly champion, as I said earlier, regulatory harmonization, especially through the African Medicines Agency, with a platform we can use to do an audit, forgive my language, an audit of what regulations are now, what we want. Column 2. Column 1, what we have in our countries. And we match first, maybe let me do it the other way around. What we want, column 1, towards harmonization. Column 2, what is obtaining now. Then column 3, the work we need to do to bridge that gap. Very simple. I come from that background myself. Not as medical issues, but from the finance side, accounting side, transaction side, and putting things together. So you have your own experience, we pool these experiences together, we can make it happen. Zambia is committed and stands ready to support continental solidarity and Africa's research and development ecosystem. We're ready, like many other countries. We will work closely with Africa CDC, AMA, International Vaccine Institute, and member states to ensure that Africa succeeds in this agenda. We will do our part, we believe others will do their part. We make a call to action. Let this launch mark a turning point from dependency to self-reliance reasonably. We know we live in a global village, but reasonable self-reliance. Vulnerability to resilience are important. We are vulnerable. How do we get more resilient? We're doing this in our economies. With climate change, we're deepening what we do to ensure that we reduce the negative effect of climate change. But here, in this sector, what we do now is important to reduce our vulnerabilities so that we can assure our citizens of a healthier, a better health service delivery. That's what matters at the end of the day. It's not just the intellectual know-how, it's not just our experiences, it's how that is seen from our population's needs for a better health service delivery. That's what matters. Ambition without delivery, without walking steps towards achieving what we want, is an exercise in futility. I know we are not in that space ourselves, in this room and outside. And for my fellow heads of state, AU institutions, and partners, we expect to work together. Furiously so, and I repeat, furiously so, clear intentions. And let us work hard and smart to realize our intent. But there's work to be done, lots of work to be done. And the best way is to cut this work into pieces in an organized way, and then yet collaborating together so that we can allocate responsibilities and therefore accountabilities. That's what sometimes our continent lacks. So we lack generalities. Let's also accept that specifics will deliver our agenda, will take us where we want to go. With these words, I hereby formally launch Achieve Africa. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Achieve Africa is launched. Your Excellency, Mr. President, I'm going to ask you to remain on the stage because we're entering the group photograph session. So congratulations, everyone. The Achieve Africa has been launched. I'm going to ask the Minister from the Republic of Ghana to join His Excellency on stage for the first group photograph. May we have our photographers up here in front? May I now call Dr. Kim to join the stage. Okay. Yeah. All right. Following that, may I call the representative of the Africa CDC and the Honorable Minister of the Republic of Ethiopia to join the group photograph. All right, I now call upon the rest of the top bench to join the group photograph, please. Yes. We welcome Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, the Minister of Health of the Republic of South Africa. Thank you so much, Excellencies. You may take the floor. Thank you so much. I think let's give a big round of applause for the launch of this important institute. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving into the institutional support part of the program, and we may have some of our leaders who may wish to exit, so let us give them that opportunity to do that, but the rest of us will remain here and we continue with the program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Excellencies. I think at this point, it is my turn to bid you goodbye and to invite my colleague, Mr. Peter Kebila, to continue with the rest of the program. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Are you all okay? You're all welcome. And today we have this privilege to launch a wonderful program, Achieve Africa. And we know that Achieve Africa cannot achieve its goals without the involvement of our major partners. But before we give the floor to the partners, it is my pleasure to invite the Minister of Health of Ethiopia to say a few words in her capacity as our host. So with your leave and with your standing ovation, kindly help me to invite Her Excellency Megdes Daba, Minister of Health of the Republic of Ethiopia, to the podium for some few remarks. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Hakainde Hichilema, President of the Republic of Zambia, Excellencies, representatives of heads of states, Excellencies, ministers, institutional directors, ladies and gentlemen, with all protocols observed, it is a privilege to stand here today now that Achieve Africa is formally launched by His Excellency with a strong vision and a strong commitment. Allow me to say thank you and allow me to also join me to say congratulations to His Excellency for his bold vision. On behalf of the Ministry of Health of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, I express our strong support for this groundbreaking endeavor. Ethiopia is restructuring its procurement system. It's restructuring prioritization of local manufacturing as the Africa 2063 agenda, where our heads of states are boldly telling us that we need to shape the future of our generation. 100% procurement preference is now granted to well-quality assured products, because everything that we manufacture in Africa should not be a standard that others will say this is below the standard. We are committed as a nation, we are committed as a continent to what our leaders are boldly telling us. Africa will manufacture, Africa will consume, and Africa will share with the rest of the world. Locally produced medicines and health products, those products that will meet the standards of the manufacturing standards, both domestically and internationally. It is not only de-risking private investments, it is also ensuring that private investors have a platform in our shaping of the global and the regional agenda. Manufacturing established in our Ethiopia will benefit a minimum of 5 years to a maximum of 7 years market warranty currently, and a framework that is ensuring about reliable access for our community. As His Excellency was speaking earlier, it is something that most of us in many countries, particularly ministers, are facing. Some commitments are there at a higher level, but it needs every institution, every individual who's delivering to the last patient, who deliver at the last mile, to be in that commitment together. And Ethiopia will again echo on His Excellency's speech, ensuring that stable and reliable demands are met and providing a strong financial and fiscal initiatives. Local productions now receive 25% preference in public tenders, duty-free imports that would be available, but the impact is also about accelerating our initiatives. Local productions have grown from 8%. We used to buy only 8% of our commodities previously. Just in 5 years, now we have access to 60%, nearly 42% lastly, but our aim is by the end of this year to reach more than 50%. This is about expanding access to local manufacturers. And this agenda will not be achieved unless the R&D component is stronger. IVI with institutions like WHO, are also working with our regional institutions like Africa CDC, AMA for regulatory standard, so that we can be moving from discussions and panels and making statements to achievable actions. We've seen it with the recent transfer of R&D that was done to Zambia, but there is a lot that we can share from other countries. Ethiopia has achieved maturity level 3 recently, and many countries in our continent are progressing towards that. We will be sharing resources, we will be sharing our expertise, but the R&D capacity is where we're still lagging behind, and where we call upon such an achievements and such initiatives like Achieve Africa. Macroeconomic reforms, bold macroeconomic reforms, like Ethiopia's homegrown economic reforms, are part of the initiatives we have, despite stronger progress that are made on local production, but not fully operational in some of our deliveries. Due to a working capital constraint that many manufacturers and private sectors are currently saying, other critical issues are also about working capital for our institutions. Banks, both regional and global banks, have to step up when we're discussing about R&D, local manufacturing, and institutional capacity. Currently, Ethiopia invests more than 32 million to construct new laboratory wing of the pharmaceutical research and development under our Alma Hansen Research Institution. And this is about ensuring that clinical trials are at the center of our aspiration for local manufacturing. Pharma research institutional hubs are going to be available. This is going to be an institution for all of us in the continent. We'll be contributing like this into the aim of Achieve Africa by building on institutions, and this can be hubs that we can also train our human capital. Ethiopia's journey to achieve vaccine sovereignty is no longer about if, but it's about how and what can we do together. Ethiopia on the verge of starting construction of ShieldVax and also establishing state-owned enterprise called Ethio Biopharma Group. This is also a bold commitment by the government to show that we are there. We will be supporting in de-risking institutions who want to come and invest in our country. On workforce, regulatory strength, research and development as a backbone, Ethiopia, with appropriate and feasible co-financing arrangement, will commit to be part of this initiative. And I thank the International Vaccine Institution for its leadership, and also for the leaders who have followed this one, trusting in the institution. Here today, for this shared vision, the Ministry of Health stands ready and to work with relevant stakeholders under the leadership of our heads of states to echo this historic achievement. Allow me to say thank you, and thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, would like to thank the Minister of Ethiopia who has articulated the various actions that are being undertaken by Ethiopia in this area of local manufacturing. Will you please kindly be on your feet as we are going to actually say goodbye to the President of Zambia, who is looking for other commitments. Thank you so much, Excellency, for coming. Can we give an ovation to our president as he's leaving? You may be seated. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we're going to move forward in our program. And without any further ado, we have been hearing that for local manufacturing to be strong, we also need a very strong regulatory environment. And Africa, in this vein, has set up a strong organization known as the African Medicine Agency, whose role is to set up the appropriate environment to facilitate and promote medicine and even medical technology products production. So without any further ado, I'm now going to call on Her Excellency Dr. Delis Mimi Darko, Director General of the African Medicine Agency, to the podium as we clap and escort her to the podium, the blue podium. Thank you so much.
Your Excellency, the Honorable Minister for Health for Ethiopia, Honorable Ministers gathered here, distinguished colleagues and partners, good morning. Let me start by congratulating the conveners of Achieve Africa. This initiative sends a powerful message that Africa is not only ready to manufacture vaccines and therapeutics, but Africa is ready to design them, to test them, to research them, and to lead the science behind them. For me, that is true sovereignty. Africa creating an end-to-end drug development life cycle. However, we know that research and development is only the starting point. For these discoveries to become real products that reach people that need them, we need clear and predictable regulatory systems. Without these, innovations can stall, but with these, innovation will move very fast. In my past life, my expertise was in the area of regulation of clinical trials and the monitoring of safety. So I know the critical role that this plays. Institutional support is what turns scientific excellence into public health impact. Regulatory readiness is therefore a non-negotiable and significant part of sovereignty. For Achieve to succeed, African innovators must know that their clinical trials can be reviewed efficiently and with speed. The data from the trials will be assessed using harmonized standards, and the Honorable President, His Excellency the President, talked about this. That manufacturing pathways are aligned and trusted, and that products can move across borders with confidence. And after that, the safety systems that monitor them are ready and to monitor them in real life use. When regulatory systems are aligned, researchers and research will move faster. Manufacturers will invest more confidently, and patients will benefit sooner. Regulation, when it is really and well designed, is not a barrier, as some people may think, but it is an enabler. It is what builds confidence in innovation. The Africa Medicines Agency exists to strengthen that trust and confidence in medical products on the continent and across the continent. If Achieve develops vaccines or therapeutics in one country, they should not stop at that country's borders. Institutional alignment is what will give the confidence to allow innovation to serve the entire continent of Africa. That is how R&D will become scalable, and that is how science will become sovereignty. We have a clear moment of opportunity here. The statistics of Africa's contribution to its vaccine needs is known by everyone. Achieve strengthens the upstream of those statistics, that is research and development. The Africa Medicines Agency strengthens the downstream, that is ensuring quality, safe, and a good and ready regulatory environment that is harmonized and that is converged. Together, along with the Africa CDC and the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and our member states, we will build a complete ecosystem, not isolated initiatives, but a connected African innovation system. Excellency, institutional support is about coherence. It is about ensuring that when African scientists innovate, African systems are ready to support them. That is how innovation will make impact. That is how our ambition for sovereignty will be achieved. The Africa Medicines Agency stands ready to play its role and will work with Achieve Africa and all partners to ensure that Africa's R&D engine is supported by strong and trusted and harmonized regulatory systems so that innovations can be translated into quality, safe, and efficacious medical products that will reach our patients faster and that will give them the confidence they deserve in Africa's healthcare delivery systems. I thank you all for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mimi Darko. We know that for some years now, Africa's medical landscape has evolved a lot with the advent of Africa CDC. So today, we were supposed to have the Director General of Africa CDC, who was supposed to be here to give us a word, but he has been replaced and represented by his special advisor, Dr. Jean-Marie Okobele. Donc, l'honneur me choisit maintenant d'inviter le docteur Jean-Marie Okobele au podium qui va intervenir au nom du directeur général du CDC Afrique. Veuillez applaudir pour lui, s'il vous plaît, mesdames et messieurs.
Honorable Ministers, DG Africa Medicine Agency, DG International Vaccine Initiative, Jérôme, Regional Director, WHO Afro, distinguished partners and scientists, it's an honor for me to join you here this morning on behalf of Africa CDC. I have 3 quick points to make this morning. The first is to say that there is need for concrete actions. Yesterday, during the side meeting on local manufacturing convened by President of Kenya and the Director General of Africa CDC, we witnessed the critical commitment to fully operationalize the African pool procurement mechanism and to convene a special summit on local manufacturing soon. These commitments mark a decisive shift from ambitions, from policies, to concrete actions. The second point is about progress that has been made. We've seen over the past few years that Africa has laid critical, solid foundations. Through the PAVM, Partnership for African Vaccine Manufacturing, and its evolution into the Platform for Harmonized Health Product Manufacturing, we are strengthening manufacturing capacity across the continent for vaccines, for diagnostics, therapeutics, and other commodities. We just heard the progress with the establishment of the African Medicine Agency, which will help us to advance regulatory credibility and harmonization. And through the African pool procurement mechanism, we are shaping predictable markets to sustain African manufacturers. My third and last point is about the need for innovation, and we've heard about this already. Manufacturing alone is not sovereignty. Sovereignty requires innovation. And as such, we must own the entire value chain, as it was so well described already when the PAVM framework was put in place. To conclude, Africa CDC sees Achieve as a fully complementary opportunity to the continental architecture already in place. As we heard from AMA Director General, Africa CDC also stands ready to work with all stakeholders to ensure that Achieve and other such initiatives produce the desired outcomes in terms of protection of the African people. I thank you very much.
Thank you once again to the representative of Africa CDC, who has articulated the various actions and activities that the Africa CDC is about to has put in place to facilitate local manufacturing. We also know that the agenda of local manufacturing cannot be fully operational without the major role that the WHO is playing. And we also know that since the advent of Dr. Mohamed Janabi to the Regional Office of WHO for Africa, WHO has really received a new momentum. So we are now going to call on Dr. Mohamed Yakub Janabi to the podium to also articulate to us the action the WHO is about to take in this area with your clap. Thank you.
Distinguished leaders, colleagues, partners, and friends, I'm deeply grateful for the opportunity to address you this morning. On behalf of Director General Tedros, who cannot be here this morning, he's back in Geneva. There is a serious meeting about pandemic agreement, which is a pioneer, so he's taking part on that. Across our continent, a quiet but determined transformation is underway. Africa is making bold choices. Choices rooted in dignity, in sovereignty, and the belief that no African child, no African family should ever again wait at the end of a global queue for life-saving tools. I'm reminded of a documentary I once watched from one of our rural regions, an image that has never left me. A mother sat outside a small, sun-baked clinic, cradling her feverish child with a tenderness that spoke louder than the words. The vaccine delivery she depended on had been delayed for days. And at one moment, she looked at the camera, tired, hopeful, and afraid, and asked, "Will it come in time?" No parent, anyway, should ever to ask that question. We all remember the painful lessons of recent global crises. When vaccines arrived slowly, when production was concentrated far from our shores, and when supply chains faltered. These were not abstract failures. They shaped really lives, really fears, and really losses. But Africa did not stand still. Africa rose with resolve, what we are seeing today. Across the continent, we see a united determination to change the narrative, to build research institutions that are strong, regulatory systems that are credible, and manufacturing ecosystems that are resilient and proudly African. Achieve Africa represents the next bold chapter in this journey. It signals our shift from vulnerability to vision, from dependency to leadership. Because vaccine self-sufficient is not a slogan, it's an ecosystem requiring discovery, clinical trials, regulatory strength, vigilant safety systems, and sustainable investment. Above all, it requires partnership across the governments, scientists, regulators, and the private sector we see inside this room. Today, Africa represents nearly 1/5 of the world population, yet produces only a tiny fraction of vaccines we use. This imbalance is unjust and unsustainable. The African Union's commitment to produce 60% of our vaccines locally by 2040 is not merely a strategic, it is historic. And the foundations are strong. Regulatory maturity is rising. Regional alliances are conducting joint reviews. Countries are strengthening their scientific and manufacturing capacity. WHO has supported member states for more than 2 decades in building these essential systems. We stand ready today to continue with unwavering commitment. Excellencies, yes, financing is tightening. Yes, external support is diminishing, but this is precisely the moment when Africa must stand tallest. Vaccine research and manufacturing are high-risk endeavors, but they are necessary and they are within our reach when we act together. WHO stands beside you, steadfast and ready to ensure that vaccines for Africa priorities diseases are increasingly developed, tested, manufactured here on African soil to the highest global standards. And as we take this bold step forward, let us remember, a continent becomes sovereign not when others step back, but when its people step forward, together with courage, conviction, and a shared belief that our destiny is ours to shape. I urge all of us to work together, and CDC Africa and WHO Afro, African Union, regional economic communities, together if we coordinate this to help our member states, because I don't want to wake up one day and the entire Africa is producing cholera vaccine. We need coordination. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Janabi. Ladies and gentlemen, we've now come to the end of this series of remarks by our institutional partners. So at this time, I would like to invite our institutional support speakers and Dr. Jerome Kim back to the stage to take a commemorative photo with your leave, as I'm also inviting our photographers to the front here to come and facilitate this process. Kindly move to the stage, please, for a commemorative picture. Either this way or that other way, there's no problem. The photographers are invited to the stage, to the front to facilitate this process. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now, can we be on our feet as we are going to say goodbye to the Minister of Ethiopia, who is leaving for other commitments? Please, can we clap as the Minister is leaving? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Please, kindly take your seats. Thank you so much. Now we're going to move to another slot in this program. And we are going to enter into what we call the high-level leadership dialogue, whose purpose is to endorse the R&D engine. And to lead us in this program, I'm now going to invite Dr. Helen Rees. Dr. Helen Rees will be the moderator of this session. And it should be noted that Professor Helen Rees is professor at the University of Witwatersrand and Executive Director of WIT's Reproductive Health and HIV Institute. So may I now invite her to the stage to moderate this session. Professor Helen Rees, please kindly come to the podium in order to moderate this session. Thank you so much. With your leave, please, can we be on our feet as we are inviting Professor Rees to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, distinguished guests, but I'm going to say something else which I think is relevant to this initiative, and that is friends. Because I don't think there's anyone in this room who isn't looking around and say, I have worked with this person before. And many of us have worked in our capacities as scientists, research and development, regulation. We've worked with manufacturers, but we've worked in many different capacities. And what the president of Zambia said was, we've been doing these things, but we've been doing it as a separated jigsaw. We now have an opportunity with Achieve Africa to bring that jigsaw together. And I think it's going to address many of the things that we've been hearing in many meetings. Not only the ambition of the African Union around manufacturing, sovereignty, but it's also things such as capacity building for our region and decolonizing research and development, and access. Ultimately, what you've heard from many of our colleagues is access. So this panel is going to look at how are we going to do this? How is Africa going to take what is an excellent idea and actually synergize around R&D? I'm going to invite all the panelists to come up and join me on stage. Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, who is my health minister, and I'm going to try and keep him to 3 minutes, but he's my minister, so I don't know how I'm going to do that. And Dr. Ivan Butera, the Minister of Health, the Minister of State from the Ministry of Rwanda. Dr. Kennedy Lishimpi from Zambia, who is the Permanent Secretary of Health in Zambia. Prof. Christian Happy, who is the Director of the African Center of Excellence in Genomics and Infectious Diseases. Dr. Sandhya Vasan, who is going to talk, and we haven't heard from this, but you saw in the vision for Achieve Africa, is that we are looking for funding. So she is going to talk from the point of view of her role as the Vice President of Global Infectious Diseases Research at the Henry Jackson Foundation, but looking at how do we fund this. And then we will finally have Prof. Drew Weissman, who is a Nobel Prize winner, and many of you are familiar with the fact that he contributed to the development and discovery of the mRNA vaccines, which were essential in the response to COVID. Let me invite all of the speakers, please, to come up on stage. And as the speakers come up, what we've asked the speakers, I'll put questions to the speakers, and we've asked each speaker to be quite concise in their responses, and I'll try and cover a range of issues that won't necessarily have been covered in the earlier talks. I'm just looking to see if we have the microphone. Yes, we have a microphone here. So I think we have everyone here, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for your time. I will then come and sit down next to Minister Motsoaledi, and then we'll start with the discussions. Thank you very much. So Minister Motsoaledi and Dr. Butera, the question I want to ask you first of all is that the African Union has a commitment to investing in R&D in the health sector, and it's a union-wide commitment, but many countries are struggling to do this. Having heard what Achieve Africa is trying to achieve, how are you going to make the case to your cabinets and to your treasuries in particular? We've heard a lot in the meeting so far about national commitment to investment. How do you make that case?
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you, colleagues. To us in South Africa, it's not a matter of making a case to the cabinet. It's just how do we move forward? Because the case has been made before, and we are already moving forward. I'm sure you are aware that in South Africa, we already have a BioVac Institute, which you all know about. The BioVac Institute is an institution that is 53% owned by the private sector and 47% owned by the state. That is producing childhood vaccines especially. Very recently, they've just launched a clinical trial on cholera vaccine. Before, the BioVac Institute used to reconstitute products from elsewhere, repackage them. But the cholera vaccine, it started from the beginning, from the scratch, meaning it's a process of manufacturing on our continent that is starting right from the scratch. We also, in South Africa, have already launched in 2024 what you call a nuclear medicine research facility, or NUMERI, which is also going to manufacture pharmaceuticals based on nuclear medicine. It's an institution of its own kind on the whole African continent. It's state of the art. It's already functioning. Quite a number of leaders all over the world have already visited to see that facility where we're planning to manufacture. And lastly, the Department of Science and Technology and Innovation in the country, it is their job to establish institutions, to research and innovate. So what is lacking on our continent is how much money do we spend for science and innovation. That's where the problem is. Because it is said that you must spend at least 2% of your GDP on innovation and research, and we are still very far from that. Perhaps that's what my cabinet in South Africa need to discuss, not whether it's going to happen or not, but to discuss how is it going to happen. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Professor Rees. So we're talking about R&D here in the context of health security, and health security, the ultimate goal for it is, sustainable development. So I'll just share what we do in Rwanda. We understood that you cannot buy health security overnight during a crisis. You need to build for it ahead of time. So I'll just use two examples for recent shocks that we experienced, starting from COVID-19 that a lot of people have talked about, but more specifically during the Marburg outbreak that happened in Rwanda in 2024. And I'll go end to end to show what the capacity what capacity is being developed in the country. So you need to understand, first of all, the epidemiology of what you're dealing with in your country, including the genetic epidemiology. What strains do you have that are circulating? So what we did is, from the get-go, collaborating with partners on the continent, Professor Happy, who's here on the panel with us, we worked together to quickly characterize what strain were we dealing with Marburg. And we immediately found that. And once you find that, you can go and now say, okay, what do I do about that? You need to have a capacity in the country to be able to launch things quickly during a crisis. So we launched a phase 2 clinical trial of an investigational vaccine with the Sabin Vaccine Institute quickly within 10 days. Marburg outbreak hit, 10 days, vaccines were already rolled out in the community. Another monoclonal antibody that was still under study was rolled out. And as a result of that, with other public health measures, we registered the lowest mortality rate ever recorded for Marburg at 22%. So we're talking about a disease that usually claims 80% of the lives. But that's not enough, right? So you know what you're dealing with, you know the tools that you deploy with, you need to strengthen the regulatory affairs quickly to be able to manage all that quickly. And our regulatory authority grew very quickly recently, has achieved maturity level 3. We're happy that we are also hosting the continental body, which is Africa Medicine Agency, here with Dr. Mimi Darko, who's here with us today. And then after the regulatory affairs are there, manufacturing is important, but before manufacturing, clinical trials are extremely important, and we need to have companies, institutions that do that on the continent. And we're happy that one of the companies that works in Rwanda, that is Rwandan-owned by majority, Akagera Medicine, that is led by Michael Fairbanks, who's here with us in the room, is doing some work on TB trials and other things. So after that, but the supply chain effectiveness also is important. You get products, but you need to be able to deliver them quickly. So we do different ways of supply deliveries, including drone deliveries for critical material, vaccine, and other things. I don't want to forget the capacity building that needs to go with that, because again, you need to build your capacity that is up to date with the recent science and the development. So we have huge programs that we train a good number of master's students, PhDs, postdocs, to be able to tackle all the end-to-end. And of course, overarching all that is the political commitment that drives all of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think in both of your comments, this issue of political will. But I think what's also very impressive in what you've both said is that Achieve Africa is saying, let's focus on the R&D component, but this is already happening. And I think you've given us very good examples. Thank you very much. Let me then move on to Dr. Kennedy Lishimpi, who's the Permanent Secretary of Health in Zambia. And what I'd like to hear from you as well is, for Zambia, we heard excellent inaugural speech from the president. But in terms of your national health strategy, how are you weaving R&D into your national health strategy?
Thank you very much for the question. First of all, I would like to say from the outset that Zambia is supporting the introduction of R&D to support vaccine production. We in Zambia have a pharmaceutical manufacturing strategy that has been costed, and that is our driving pillar that is sitting under the National Health Strategic Plan as well as the National Development Plan. In this particular strategy, we are trying to see how we enhance the production of medicines and the vaccines in Zambia. And one of the issues there is that we already are aware that at the current moment, almost over 95% of the vaccines we use in Zambia are imported. And then we have a regulator that is at level 2, they need to go to level 3, and that we need to build skills in R&D and to support local production. So with all these realizations, we are now positioning ourselves to ensure that we build capacity, first of all, starting with human resource in these high-level skills so that we can support the research and development of vaccines. This is important because we need to match what we are doing in the lab with what the local disease epidemiology is, and so that we know what strains of illnesses the disease-causing agents are, what are the antigens that are prevalent, so that if we are able to develop a vaccine against that, this team is able to do it. And with that, after we develop the pharmaceutical manufacturing for medicines and vaccine strategy, we have costed it, and there's a component sitting there that will be used now to make sure that we support this research and development innovation within the country. And going forward, we have already put together some of the steps that we need to get to. One is local manufacturing for oral cholera vaccine. We already have an MOU with one investor that we have already earmarked, and we've gone through all the processes. What we are waiting for is now for them to now begin the building of the factory. Secondly, we did an MOU with the IVI to ensure that the R&D also comes into the country to support the manufacturing of the vaccines. So Zambia is ready for now to ensure that whatever initiatives are on the continent, we take advantage of that and then bring them home so that we can also contribute to the production of vaccines on the African continent.
Thank you very much. And thank you. And I think we've talked a lot, and people have given the backgrounds of the shortages of COVID. We've seen it again with Mpox. But you raised such an important point, because even sort of essential vaccines that have been around for a long time, oral cholera vaccine, we had shortages when we needed it. So this emphasis on not only new pathogens and new vaccines, but actually saying what does the region need is absolutely critical. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I think it's appropriate now to go to Prof. Christian Happy, who is head of the African Center of Genomics and ID, and who really has sequenced many pathogens in our region. But I'm excited to hear what your perspective is, because one of the things that we really also want to do in parallel is obviously build our R&D capacity. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Professor Ellen. I think I just want to start by saying that R&D shouldn't be seen as luxury. I think the concept in our own mindset often is R&D is a luxury. It's not a luxury. It is a necessity. And the other thing that I will say is that, do we do R&D in Africa? The answer is yes. Are we doing enough? I don't think we're doing enough. Do we have the human resources, the infrastructure, and then the capacity to do R&D? We do have some. And the question is, how can we improve that? The answer is yes, we should try to look for resources from within to basically just improve our R&D. Looking for resources from within to improve our R&D actually will also enable us to set the priorities areas where we want to do R&D. And for instance, you saw some example here, Dr. Ivan mentioned that we have the capacity on the continent, but then I think we need to absolutely come together to leverage the resources that we have, to leverage the infrastructure that we have, to leverage everything that we have in order to ensure that we can do end-to-end on the continent. I think we should go beyond the whole concept that we do not have what it takes to do R&D for health development on the continent, and especially for things like vaccine, biologics, diagnosis, and others. That exists, but we need to enhance that. We need to improve on it. But then this is where I think that this program appears to be unique in many ways. It's not a situation whereby the biologics is developed elsewhere and brought into the continent, but it is actually started from the bottom up. Conceive, design, develop, and deploy on the continent. And I do think that that's where I see the uniqueness for this program. And that's the reason why some of us, bought into it. That is leveraging what we have and really start making us owners of the program. Because that's where this is where we've seen the difference. But most importantly is the fact that it's a unique component which has to do with capacity building, technology transfer, and really ownership and leadership from the continent. And I think I don't want to say more than this. I think this, for me, appears to be very unique, appears to be appealing. But most importantly is the fact that what I see here is a model that is a bit different. It's not a model that is bringing resources in the continent to build the R&D and then to do all of this related to this program, but it's actually starting by engaging Africa leadership to lead by owning the program, by putting in the resources. And we've seen African countries committed. I'm talking about Rwanda, Zambia, South Africa, all of those countries are committed, putting in the resources to make it happen. And I think this might, if supported and other countries join, this might be a major game changer for R&D development in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm going to clap, so I'm encouraging everyone to give an applause, because I think that's a very important point, African leadership for R&D, which is where you ended, so thank you. I just want to just say on that, there have been many publications that have looked at R&D, and I think you've raised such an important point, because many of them, the R&D will be undertaken in the continent, but the leadership, the academic leadership, and the claims for what's discovered go elsewhere. So I think your point about African leadership is absolutely essential. So thank you very much for that. Thank you. I'll go on now to Dr. Sandhya Vasan. She's the Vice President of Global Infectious Disease Research at the Henry M. Jackson Foundation. And as I said, we saw the call for Achieve Africa included the need for funding. And obviously, you've had some roles in funding, and how do we actually mobilize globally funding for this initiative? Do you have thoughts on that?
Thank you. Well, Dr. Jerome Kim and I were part of the first iteration and attempt at Achieve, as he mentioned in his opening remarks, when this came from a call from USAID that we submitted in collaboration with so many people here the week that USAID was defunded. And so I applaud IVI for their persistence and perseverance in raising nearly $100 million already through external sources and through many local governments across the continent to fill that gap. But ultimately, as big a number as $100 million sound, that's really just the beginning. That's seed funding. this needs to become, over time, just a truly sustainable effort coming from, as my colleague Dr. Happy said, from African leaders for the long term. And so one of the roles that my foundation, the Henry Jackson Foundation, and its partners, HJF MRI, Medical Research International, which is represented here today by leaders from Nigeria and Kenya, what we're doing and as part of Achieve is working with IVI and others to develop a training framework that's sustainable. And so in conversations with Dr. Kim and Dr. Nkezi and Dembi, we're working together to develop over these 5 years a framework such that those in the room who have expertise in these disparate pieces, as you nicely said, that are a jigsaw, we not only bring them together for a routinized pipeline, but also transfer those skills for the future. And partnerships in Achieve include partnerships with some seminal universities in multiple countries who have agreed to host and conduct these trainings, because ultimately over time, we need the next generation of Africans to come up with just intimate familiarity of the entire pipeline, the entire spectrum. We've leveraged a lot of decades of expertise that we have already in partnership with the U.S. government to have worked initially a lot on development of HIV vaccines, and the president of Zambia said that remains a priority pathogen, but diversified that for. So I believe that there are many groups here, including our partners and our leaders at HFMRI, who have deep expertise in clinical trials, but the gaps that are the biggest are probably in the preclinical animal space, the early antigen conception, design, and testing, and then moving into manufacturing. Manufacturing in Africa is exploding. And so what we've seen in other nations is that once you have products that are made and manufactured, that actually generates revenue for sustainability of these efforts. So I see Achieve as a very important initial seed for the first 5 years that will carry forward for decades to come.
Thank you very much. I'd like to then invite Dr. Hanan Balki, who's the Regional Director for WHO EMRO region. So I'd like her to come and just join the panel. But I think while you're coming up, what I would say is that a very important partner here will be, as you said, donors, that the money that has so far been secured is the beginning. And I think what we're asking everyone in this room and beyond to do is to actually embrace this idea that we do have a Pan-African initiative for such an important technology and multiple technologies that we need. So thank you so much. I know we rushed you onto the stage, but I think you've had a chance to hear from colleagues, from ministers, from scientists, senior colleagues about the African region. For the EMRO region, does the vision for Achieve Africa, does it resonate? Because clearly part of EMRO is part of this region. So please, your comments. I think try talking. Yeah.
It is working. Thank you so much. And of course, I think we're all rushing between different sessions. So for EMRO, very briefly, we have 7 member states in the African continent. In total, EMRO has 21 member states. So we have Morocco, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Somalia, Sudan, Djibouti, and Tunisia, I think I mentioned. The issue of production, I think, of course, we are in line with this agenda. It is very crucial for us. And in fact, when I assumed my role as the regional director for EMRO in early 24, I initiated an access initiative that has a laser focus on the whole track from research and development all the way to prescription, identifying the path of research and development, production, scale up, NRAs, purchasing, delivery, storing, and so on. And in each one of those steps, there's a role for WHO. So we wanted to be laser focused on what is our role as WHO, where do we fit in this whole chain, and how can we be of best benefit to the member states for this specific agenda? Because not any one of us can do the whole amount of work that needs to be done. In the EMRO region, we have issues with the research and development and clinical trials specifically. We don't have enough networks that conduct clinical trials that look into the issues of the region and the people, so we need to bring that up with other entities. When it comes to the NRAs, and I had the privilege of being with Madame Mimi in the previous session, we talk a lot about this. We work as WHO for the pre-qualification and the NRA support. And we work with other partners around the different regions, and we have a target of 7 to 8 NRAs to reach maturity level 3, if not 4. And the whole idea is to elevate the level of the NRAs to look into substandard falsified medications, but also the oversight of potential production. That's a daunting agenda, but we're looking in doing it where we're at the table then for the next step of the strategy of production, where the molecule productions are complementary and they address the stockouts and they address the burden of diseases to reach the SDGs for 2030. So in general, we want to make sure that the member states can produce what they need for the biggest burdens of diseases in their own countries. And we will be working with other partners to make sure that we have a more explicit strategy on production, because that is, as you all know, is more owned by the private sector. And the communication between the ministers of public health and the private sector, ministries of investment and production, are not always at the table at the same time. Number two, the ministries of investment looking at local production sometimes look at it from an investment case and not from a public health case. And I'm so happy to hear about the cholera production, because as an EMRO region, we struggle a lot with securing the number of cholera vaccines for the cholera outbreaks. Of course, my region is the most daunted by conflicts, wars, and countries under sanctions. So that local production becomes very, very important. And also rabies vaccine, we have a strategy for the disease elimination, understanding what is needed to secure the disease elimination program on the different communicable diseases, and so on. So I'm very happy to be at my first AU, very happy to be on this panel and hear from colleagues, learn from them, and work with our partners on this agenda.
Thank you very much, and thanks so much for coming onto the panel. And very important to hear, because as you say, your region has different, well, I mean, it's part of this region, but it has from the WHO perspective, has specific challenges, as you just outlined. But I want to just, before we go to the video, I want to just perhaps say a few words, just listening to what everyone has said. I think when we heard the announcement from the AU heads of state about manufacturing, I think there was initially a concern that it might be felt to be a simple thing, that you build a factory and you get a vaccine. And I think what is absolutely clear from the colleagues that on this panel and everyone who's spoken is there's a thorough understanding that this is a chain of events. And for our region, we have pathogens that other people don't have. We have shortages that other people don't have. And so we will have our own solutions from the A to Z of this chain of events. And that includes the science of developing vaccines. It includes regulatory science. It includes manufacturing science. There is science at every step of this way. And I'm noticing that there is an empty chair here. And what we haven't heard in this discussion, but will be extraordinarily important as we develop Achieve Africa and our own R&D and our vaccine access, is community engagement. Because it is communities at the end of the day that are going to accept these vaccines. And in one discussion that we had in the WHO vaccine meeting, the regional vaccine meeting, a couple of the countries from our region said, will communities accept vaccines we manufacture in our region? Now, I don't think any of us had ever thought about that. But I think what we have here is an extraordinarily important communication strategy issue, which is to say, number one, this is what we're going to do, and we're proud that we are doing it. And number two, we are going to access our own vaccines. They're going to be of high quality, as Mimi said, and they are going to be accessible to everyone in our communities. So I'd like to thank the panel, and then before you go, you might want to go down, because we're going to have a brief video. You might want to leave the stage so you can see the video. But I'd like to thank the panel very much, and I'd like to thank Achieve Africa for the vision. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sorry for the panelists. I've just been told that they should be on the stage for some group photo. So we are calling on the photographers. Before projecting the video, please, very quickly, just kindly accept to stay on the stage for a group photo. Thank you so much. The photographers, please. So the panelists, please, thank you, and sorry for that. Thank you for your kind understanding. Thank you so much. Can we give a round of applause to our panelists? Thank you, thank you, thank you. So we're now going to call on the media team to project the video. Thank you. Kindly stay focused.
Thank you for allowing me to attend and present at the Achieve Africa Summit. I apologize that I'm unable to attend in person. I wanted to highlight a few important points of this program. First, and to me most importantly, it represents both health security and self-reliance. These two linked together will develop and lead to a future of continued development and improvement and expansion of the program. Achieve Africa is an African-led response. That's critical. It represents initially a 5-year program, but my hope is that it will develop the self-sufficiency to continue and be an important force moving forward for decades to come. It's built on African political and scientific leadership. This is critical. My lab will become as involved as we're able to, at your request, to help develop these programs, to develop the basic science research, to share our technology, to allow the GMP sites to start producing new drugs and vaccines now while the basic science programs develop, and to aid in any way possible to continue the development of new vaccines and therapeutics for the people of Africa. Thank you very much for allowing me to talk to you. Have a wonderful meeting. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've had a wonderful morning, and that has just culminated in this last panel discussion that has actually presented the landscape of local manufacturing, focusing on the importance of research and development, and especially African leadership in this area of research and development, leveraging existing capacities, the development of the infrastructural capacity, the tech transfer, and genomic sequencing, among others. So we've had a wonderful morning. Now we've come to the end of this very rich session. And it is my pleasure and my honor to now invite Mr. Ondori G. Mogeni, who is Manager of Government Relations and AVEC Africa at the International Vaccine Institute, for the closing speech. So without any further ado, Mr. Ondori, you have the floor. Thank you so much.
Hello. Yeah, at least, Mr. Kibila, I'm not making a speech, but rather closing remarks. And I think we have had a very wonderful morning, and I'm sure we'll leave this place very energized. And on behalf of the leadership that is present right now, led by the RDWHO EMRO, Dr. Hanan, DG IVI, Dr. Jerome, and Dr. Okobele representing Dr. Kaseya, and the ministers present. It is my distinguished honor to be able to give the closing remarks as we come to the end of this particular event. And we would like to recognize His Excellency Hakainde Hichilema, President of Zambia, for convening this very important meeting today. And of course, with the leadership of other African Union member states, including Egypt, Ethiopia, Ghana, Nigeria, Rwanda, South Africa, and of course, naturally Zambia. You will realize that from across the continent, we see the same reality, that Africa has strong scientists, capable institutions that are growing their manufacturing capacity. And what has been missing is how do we connect to this jigsaw puzzle? And for that reason, Achieve Africa is about bringing together that system, linking research, clinical trials, manufacturing across countries and institutions so that Africa can move forward from fragmented efforts to a coordinated impact. But this is also about leadership, ladies and gentlemen. It's about ensuring that African scientists are leading, that Africa priorities are driving decisions, and the value that is created through data, innovation, and products remained anchored on the continent, and hopefully as we strive towards the 2040 goal of 60% production on the continent. From IVI's regional office in Africa, led by Professor Nikeis Ndembi, who has had to, is at another engagement right now, we are committed to supporting this work on the ground and strengthening partnerships, building capacity, and to help translate this strategy into implementation. Achieve Africa is not an initiative, it is a shift towards Africans' leadership in health and innovation, and it's a shift that is already underway because as the President Hichilema did officially announce, Achieve Africa is now official, and we'll definitely look forward to work with all of you across the continent and partners beyond the continent to make this a reality so that we can have continental self-sufficiency. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, and thanks for coming.
Ladies and gentlemen, would like to thank the President of Zambia for helping us in inaugurating this wonderful milestone for Africa. And I would also like to thank you all for coming. It was a pleasure playing the role of MC for this ceremony. It's wonderful. We've now come to the end of this event, which is a major milestone. Can we clap for ourselves, please? So thank you all for coming. Thank you so much for coming. We've come to the end of this ceremony. But before we leave, we are going to call on the representatives of the media who would like to have some interviews with maybe Director Kim and any other key panelists of this meeting to share some views privately with their media outlets. And then for the rest of the participants, thank you all for coming. God bless you. The meeting stands adjourned, and see you next time. Have a wonderful day.